Hello, friends, and welcome to the Hopeful Homeschooling Podcast, where we help you find help, hope, and a little humor in your everyday homeschool. If we have never met before, friend, my name is Kelly Warner from Hope in the Chaos, and I am so excited that you have allowed me to be part of your homeschool journey. Right now, we are in the middle of a multi-part series on how to start homeschooling. I do believe that this is episode 5. I'm kind of losing count. Um, we are going to spend the next, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes chatting about learning styles in your homeschool. This is going to be one of the more in-depth episodes. So wherever you are listening or watching from, I do encourage you to grab a notebook or write some things down. Of course, if you're multitasking, you might not be able to, but I will try to give you little reminders that if you're multitasking, like this is where you really want to tune in. And I get it, friends. I tend to take in video and audio through my earbuds while I'm bebopping around the house, whether it's vacuuming, doing a laundry, washing dishes, or sometimes even while I'm driving down the road, right? Because as moms, we got to do what we've got to do. But like I said, we're going to dive in. This one's going to be a little deeper. But at the end, I'm going to have a few extra tidbits that are really going to help you. So we're not going to waste too much time. I got myself a wonderful cup of tea. This is my favorite cup. I use it for all of my tea. And I hope that you also have, like I said, maybe a cup of coffee or tea so that you can listen along. So today in our series on how to start homeschooling, like I said, we are diving right back in and we're going to talk about learning styles. Now, if you are a brand new homeschooler, here's the caveat. If you have not even started homeschooling, friend, you don't need to worry about this, right? This is, you've already pulled them out of school or you've already sent in your letter of intent. I'm going to encourage you, friend, if you haven't yet pulled the plug, to go back and start at the beginning of this series. Um, this is a little bit more advanced, a little bit deeper, and I do not want you to get bogged down in learning how to homeschool so much so that you never actually pull the plug on starting your homeschool journey. So, if homeschooling, friend, is feeling harder than you expected, or perhaps if your lessons are falling flat, maybe that math book that so and so recommended just it's not working out right, or maybe you're just wondering why homeschooling is harder for you than it looks like for those of us that are posting online, friend. Let me tell you, we don't post the questionable moments online anyway. Okay. Not every math book is going to be amazing. And just because it works for your friend doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And of course, some lessons they do fall flat. They really do. But one way that you can make homeschooling better for all of you is by learning about learning styles. Each of us have a unique way that we take material in better. Some of us prefer to read, some of us prefer to listen, and some of us prefer to do. That's really how it boils down to, right? Learning styles matter though. And while some of us can learn in multiple ways, right? We don't always learn the best. I can tell you, I am a reader, or I am a doer. Okay. If I'm listening, right, we can talk about how I multitask. I need to listen to that many times over. So oftentimes I'll take in the same podcast episode 2 or 3 times before I truly learn what's being said. Because again, I'm listening to them while I'm multitasking. I'm not sitting and focused. I'm driving. I'm doing laundry. I'm busy and I get it. Now, one of the biggest benefits of homeschooling is you, friend, are not locked into a one size fits all classroom. Neither is your child. If you have a hands-on learner or sitting right beside an audio learner, you can make it work for both of them. In a traditional setting, of course, teachers have to teach the same material to the same students in the same way every single day. Okay, regardless of how your child learns. But at home, you don't have to. You're not bogged down by that. You have freedom to move around and allow your child to learn in the way that works best for them. That means you can even bring things in like fidget spinners and puzzles, especially during read alouds or anytime where your children are listening to the lesson, right? The whole point of today's video, though, is we're going to start by understanding how your child learns best. We're going to dive on the shallow end of the learning styles because I don't want to spend too much time and bore you to death with them. And of course, I told you we're going to try and stick 10 to 15 minutes. And I have the gift of gab and no clock on my screen where I'm recording this. So, learning styles, though, it's not about putting your child into a box. Homeschooling is never about putting your child into a box. It's not about giving them a label or stating that you're 7 and this is how you learn for the rest of your life. Absolutely not. However, understanding your child's learning style or preferred learning style gives you a tool. It helps you to evaluate. If you have a child that, for example, we had a fabulous math program in our early years of homeschooling, but it was workbook based. And I learned very, very quickly that my children needed a video-based math program, right? So instead of fighting against the system, right, swimming upstream, as you will, I found something that worked for them. And it was a wonderful experience. So rather than fighting your child's natural tendencies, learning about learning styles and learning about your child's preferred learning style is going to help you to work with them. It's going to help you evaluate curricula. It's going to help you know whether or not the co-op ladies amazing math program is actually going to be amazing for you. So what are the 3 main learning styles? So, and if you're multitasking, let's listen real quick, okay? Just come back. 3 main learning styles. We've got visual learners, we've got audio learners, and we've got kinesthetic learners, okay? There you go. You can go back to multitasking for a second, right? These are your 3 main, and homeschoolers tend to focus on these ones. They're easy. They're pretty easy to observe. Now, oftentimes, children under 8 tend to be kinesthetic. That's your hands-on learner, right? And quite frequently, we have a preferred learning style, but right behind it is our secondary. Okay, so you might see that your child, they're a kinesthetic learner, but they're also visual. Or perhaps they're auditory, but they're also kinesthetic. The hands-on learning is a big one. Okay, we're going to take just a brief walkthrough, like I said. And if you're taking notes, I'll let you know when to come back. Obviously, if you're driving, please don't write anything down. So visual learners, right? These are learners who learn and understand. They remember best when they see it, right? Often, and again, come back if you're multitasking. These are kids who love pictures and books. They notice the details and illustrations. They enjoy charts, diagrams, and written instruction. And often they're really good at remembering what something looked like. They're really detail oriented. For visual learners, learning is going to click best when you're presenting visually. This might look like letting them read the book rather than having them sit through a long read aloud. Perhaps you're going to watch short instructional videos, but you're going to make sure it's video, not just audio, right? You're going to use maps, timelines, charts, color coding, and notes are wonderful for these particular learners. Now, in a homeschool setting, visual learners often thrive with a literature-based learning, illustrated textbooks, copywork, which I adore copywork. And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to link a post in the show notes talking all about the wonders of copywork. And then, of course, your visual learners are going to love whiteboards, notebooks, anything that allows them to see what is expected and what they need to learn. Okay, if your child prefers to learn quietly, they look, they read, they observe before they jump in. That is a really good way to figure out that your child is a visual learner. Okay, so these are the ones they're observing. They're slow. They're not just running right in. Okay, they're slowing down, and that's okay. And full disclosure, neither learning style is better than the other. Right? They're all different. And what you can do as a homeschooler, the whole reason this matters for you and to you is because it allows you to learn how your child learns and play to that preferred learning style. Now, is it always going to happen? No. I have visual learners and we still do read alouds. Okay? Just because your child has a preferred learning style doesn't mean that's the only way they should learn. And in fact, one of the things that we should be working with our children on, as much as we want to teach to their strengths, also teach them how to be a little uncomfortable, to push themselves. Now, that might be a lesson for the later years, right? High school, upper middle school, right? The lower grades, you're definitely going to want to try and keep the majority of their learning in their preferred learning style. Okay. So now that we've done our visual learners, let's jump into our auditory learners, right? And if you're multitasking, here's the definition. So come right back. Auditory learners, just like it sounds, are those that learn best through listening and speaking, right? These are kids who love to talk things through, right? You've got the gift of gab. Okay. These are your children who ask a lot of questions, right? They enjoy being read to, even at older ages. These are the kids that read alouds were made for, as is the audiobook industry, right? They remember songs, stories, and conversations very well because, of course, everything's auditory. Auditory learners process information by hearing it and oftentimes by saying it back aloud. This means an auditory learner is perfect for something called narration. Now, copywork is where you're copying and writing things down. Like I said, I have a post for that and I'll put it in the show notes. Narration is when your child explains what they have learned. Okay. Narration is a great tool that homeschoolers use to assess learning. You might even use it in place of a test if you have a child who has test anxiety. You might use it in place of maybe a quiz or a review. Like, have them go back, have them tell you, have them teach someone else. Auditory learners, literally, they need to hear and they need to speak. Okay, so in your homeschool, in addition to narration, your auditory learning might look like read alouds that are done together. It might look like listening to audiobooks, podcasts, right? Even hopping on YouTube and just putting their earbuds in while they're doing something else because they don't have to see it, they have to hear it. Okay. Again, narration, discussing lessons rather than asking them to write long, drawn out answers or be bogged down with a bunch of tests and quizzes, right? It also might look like using songs and rhythm to help them remember. Auditory learners tend to struggle with silent seat work, long worksheets, anything that has them not talking for a while. But it doesn't mean that they're not learning, okay? It just means that they learn best when the learning feels relational and conversational. Okay. Now, if you have an auditory learner who is struggling with, perhaps you have a curriculum and you don't want to change it out, budget or whatever reason, one of the best things you can do is just read it to them. And I did this many years ago with my auditory learner. She could not sit, read, and regurgitate. And so I learned how to adapt that program because we could not just go out and buy a new history curricula. So I started reading it to her. That led to the amazing, multi-age history program that we have been now running for years. But that is one way that you can adapt a visual-based learning program to your auditory learner if you need to make it work. It's also one way you can just adapt to bring things in. All right, if you're multitasking, we are going to move on to our kinesthetic learners. So ears open, right, my friends? All right, kinesthetic learners. These are your hands-on learners. These are people that need to move and touch and feel and do, right? Oftentimes, these are our busy kids too. So I am a huge fan. Like I said, we do audio books or not audiobooks. We do a lot of read alouds, I should say. And I am a huge fan of letting my kids do something while I'm reading. They can color, they can draw, they can use a puzzle, they can do worksheets if they want. They can use fidget spinners or whatever. I don't mind. Kinesthetic learners really struggle with sit still learning. And so if you've got a kinesthetic learner, you're going to have to do some adapting, and that's okay. Now, here's a caveat, and I'm going to start with a full disclaimer. I am not a doctor, okay? Oftentimes, the kinesthetic learners are busy. They're busy, and it can be hard, okay? Kinesthetic learners, ADHD, ADD, that all tends to kind of come in together. Now, I do not have a child that has been diagnosed, okay? But I am going to say one of the best things that you can do for children that need a little bit more busyness is allow them to be busy. Keep their body busy. It slows their mind down. It's not even in my notes. Probably shouldn't have gone there, but here we are. Anyway, All right, so our kinesthetic learners, like I said, they need hands-on. They need movement. They are not going to learn from a worksheet, okay? They are never going to be excited for math drills, okay? These are our children and adults who need to move while learning. Okay. Give them the busy balls, give them the fidget spinners, let them go. They love to build, create, and experiment with things. These children learn by doing, not by watching, right? They are all about pulling levers and twisting knobs. And if it messes up, they don't care. Oftentimes, they can just put it right back together, right? These are the children that struggle to sit still for long periods of time. That's why I have the little caveat there, right? It doesn't mean that they are mislabeled, that they are distracted. It doesn't mean that they're not a good learner. It means that they don't fit in the traditional model of education that most of us know, which is public schooling and sit still, read, repeat, test, and do it again, right? These kids have to be busy. They process information through their bodies, right? Just like the visual learner, right? Your sense, you get your five senses, your visual learner has to see things, your auditory learner has to hear things, and your kinesthetic learner, they have to do things, they have to touch things. Okay. But homeschooling is a gift, especially for our kinesthetic learners, because it means that you can allow them the opportunity to be just as busy and doing as they need to be. Kinesthetic learners often are the children who struggle the most in a public school setting because the public schools, they cannot accommodate. They're not set up for it. And we're not bashing public school here in any way, shape, or form. Some of my closest friends are public school teachers, right? But oftentimes our kinesthetic learners are the kids that struggle the most because they have to be up. They have to be busy. They can't sit still. So kinesthetic learning, okay? And again, if you're multitasking and you think you have a kinesthetic learner, heads up, because your child needs a lot of hands-on projects. They need experiments. They need to build models or act things out. They need to be allowed to cook, to craft, to go on nature walks. They need manipulatives for math, right? Blocks, popsicle sticks, candy pieces, it doesn't matter. Okay. For these learners, learning sticks when it is connected to real life and when they can literally touch the learning. Okay. For homeschooling, this is beautiful. This this is allowed to happen because no matter what program you buy or use, you can adapt it to your kinesthetic learning. Now, how are you going to identify your child's learning style? You're going to watch them. You're going to observe them. Odds are, while I was going through the different types of learners and what to look for, you probably already said, that's my son, that's my daughter. Like, you just know because you know your children. And like I said, learning styles can be fluid, they can change. Typically, we have one that's strong, but we have a second anyway. So the good news is, like I said, you don't need a formal test to do any of this. You observe your child. How do they play? Do they sit quietly and read a book? Do they want you to interact with them and let them tell you all of the things? Are they touching and doing, right? How do they explain things back to you? Do they draw it out on a picture? Do they share the story with you? Or do they need you to come look at the book, right? What frustrates them most if you're already homeschooling? What frustrates them most? Which subjects do they steer away from? Perhaps because you're using a learning method that doesn't jive with them. And also what excites them. So look at those four things, right? How do they play? How do they explain things to you? What frustrates them most and what excites them? That's going to, right there, those four little things. If you didn't figure out where your child is, that's it. That's it. It's so simple. Now, you can also ask yourself, do they want to see it? Do they want to talk about it? Or do they want to do it? It's that simple. Now, remember, it can change and it can even change throughout subjects, right? I pick on math a lot because it's the subject most people love to hate. But perhaps your child is very much a audio learner, but when it comes to math, they need video. That's the same thing. This is what happens when I don't put my examples already on my paper, right? Perhaps they're doing great with their workbooks, right? Except for math, they need videos. That's the example I was supposed to be coming up with. This is real life here. I don't edit my videos. Okay. Now, your child might be visual in reading, but perhaps they're kinesthetic in math. That's totally normal, friend. And it's also normal if it changes. Now, you can use your learning styles, but don't let it overcomplicate things, right? This is where I want to offer you some freedom and a disclosure, right? Learning your child's learning style does not mean that you need to overhaul your homeschool. It does not mean you need to go out and say, oh, I got a really good deal on this program, but really I have a kinesthetic learner. You don't have to go out and buy a new one. You can adapt. Just like I said, I read to my daughter once I realized she was more of an auditory processor. I did that with all of her subjects throughout many years of schooling. Okay. It simply does mean, though, that, now that you know better, you can do better. So if you know that you have a method that's not working, figure out how to adapt it and make it work. And then lean into what does work more often, right? If worksheets are causing tears, try a discussion. Okay. If read alouds cause restlessness, shorten them or try hands-on activities. I'm a huge fan of read alouds for all subjects and for all learners. And I have an amazing read aloud guide. It's completely free and it includes tips and tricks to make read alouds magical. I'm going to link that in the show notes. And if lectures fall flat, add visuals, right? If it's okay. Small shifts in your homeschool can make a big difference, especially when you're starting out. Now, I know that this might be a bit overwhelming. We're in the How to Start Homeschooling series. And if this video, right, if this information just makes it more complicated, remember, friend, especially if you are pulling out of the public school, and especially if you're pulling out mid-year, you don't want to start with curricula on day one. You want to pause and give your child the gift that is deschooling. Now, we don't have time to go into that right now, but I do have a blog post over on hopingthechaos.com all about deschooling that I'll make sure I link in the show notes so that you can go and learn about that. And remember, you don't have to understand learning styles right away, and you do not have to be a perfect homeschooler from day one, friend. I can promise you. But as I said a minute ago, small shifts make a big difference. And homeschooling becomes easier for you when you adapt to those small changes and realize that just because it works for another family or just because they wrote a great sales page at the curriculum website doesn't mean that it's the right choice for you. Okay. So, friend, if you're watching this and you're just like, oh no, I want you to take a deep breath because you didn't do anything wrong by picking a program that perhaps doesn't work. And you haven't done anything wrong if you've already ordered the curricula that you think your child needs and you haven't even started homeschooling, right? You're excited and there's so much to learn in the How to Start Homeschooling realm. Okay. You were still learning how to homeschool yourself, right? And it's new and it's different. And unless you're a second generational homeschooler, you have no experience, right? And many of us are first generation homeschoolers, right? We're just starting. We're learning how to homeschool while our children are learning how to be homeschooled. We're learning together. Homeschooling, friends, though, it is a relationship-based journey. The learning styles are simply going to help you connect with your child. It's going to help you build that relationship even better. Now, if you want to dig deeper into these learning styles, and if you want to know how to apply them practically, if you want some help picking curriculum that works with your child, and if you need some more assistance building a homeschool that feels peaceful instead of frustrated, I am going to invite you right now to check out the Complete Beginner's Guide to Homeschooling. Okay. It is a 92-page ebook that includes PDF worksheets for you to print out. It's like having me in your home, walking alongside with my 10 plus years of homeschool experience. I am going to come alongside you and we're going to talk not just about learning styles, but curricula, relationships, how to keep everything legal, and really dig deep into how to homeschool, whether that's starting or restarting. Okay. Now, you can find this on my website. I'm going to link it in the show notes. But as part of this video series, I am offering a $10 off coupon code when you use the word guide, GUIDE, right? So that's going to make the cost of this ebook, it's like $7. Um, it's going to walk you through learning styles and curriculum choices. It's going to help you with planning or not planning if you're planning too much. It's going to help you with mindset. And like I said, it's going to go step by step so that you do not have to figure out your homeschooling journey alone. So I invite you to grab the link below and get a copy of the Complete Beginner's Guide to Homeschooling because I want your homeschool to be a success. And I know you do too. And one of the best ways you can make that happen is by investing in yourself as a homeschool parent. Friend, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Hopeful Homeschooling Podcast. My name is Kelly Warner with Hope in the Chaos, and I hope you have a fantastic day and happy homeschooling.